So thanks everyone for joining us on looking at this Neuroscience of Leadership program. So I want to tell you just a little bit about how the program evolved and a little bit about myself. I started looking at neuroscience by complete accident, and when I started to do some research and some reading, I kind of went, oh wow, at long last, here is some science and some evidence that proves some of the things that I know work, and also proves some of the things I know that don't work. I went to a lot of different conferences around the world. I read everything I could get my hands on. I started following neuroscientists and seeing what they were saying, and I did some postgraduate studies in neuroscience of leadership. The thing that was really interesting is that as I saw people speaking at these conferences, and these neuroscientists were really, I thought they'd be really dull and boring, but they were actually really cool. And as I was saying things, the light bulbs were going off for me. I was kind of making connections in my head, in my brain, about what the science meant. So kind of like translating it into the so what. And I was really excited by this. And by at the end of a presentation, these people that were really smart were sitting next to me, and they turned to me and saying, oh, well, that's all very interesting, but what does it mean? And I kind of looked at them and thought, are you kidding me? And then it dawned on me, wow, they just don't get how to translate this into the practical application. And so I decided to develop Australia's only accredited Neuroscience of Leadership program, which is a diploma program that's being delivered to students around the globe. We've had students from Lithuania, Italy, South Africa, the US, UK, New Zealand, all around the place. We've been delivering that for probably about 6 years. We've been delivering programs online and face-to-face. I've spoken at lots of conferences, both in Australia and internationally. So I've also transformed my own brain. I think that's really important to kind of talk about, because you've got to practice what you preach. And so I went from being a workaholic stress junkie to, someone that's pretty calm these days, and a much better version of myself. I've helped transform the brain of thousands of other people. I work with individuals, I work in organisations, and it's really exciting to see people take these ideas on board and run with them, and to see organisations and people change as a result of that. And I've also been winning some awards for some of the work that I've done. So I want to take you through what are the foundations of this program? Like, what is it that we are setting out to do to help you become a better leader? And one of the things I want to say from the very beginning is, if you're looking for a program that's going to teach you budgeting and strategic planning and a whole bunch of technical skills, then this isn't the program for you. You're probably better off doing like a diploma of management or something like that. This program is very much focused on supporting people to become high-performing individuals, and to support you to lead and facilitate high-performing teams, and ultimately to develop high-performing organisations. And we know that one of the key things to be able to do this is actually based on learning about our brain. And we think that there are three really key intelligences that set people apart and that are really critical in this busy world we operate within. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the concept of emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman brought that to our attention many years ago, and it's suddenly become the flavour of the month. And it's listed in the top 10 skills in the World Economic Report as being a skill that people need. And really, a lot of the focus of the program is on this, trying to support people to get better at self-regulating and to be able to manage your emotion reactions in the moment. And that if that's something that's challenging for people, it takes a bit of practice. And like anything, when we have to replace old wiring with new wiring, it takes lots of attention and focus, but it can be done. Obviously, I'm an example of that. So I've learned how to be able to very effectively manage what we call limbic arousal. So, when I start to get a bit frazzled, I can manage that very effortlessly in the moment, which is a really nice thing. We know that social intelligence is really important because we interact in the social world of work with people, and we need to be able to respond appropriately and read people. And it's really key to be able to notice what's going on for other people that you're interacting with. So, you can choose the way that you respond to them so that you respond appropriately and, get the best out of people. So those two intelligences are probably not particularly new to you. The third one is a intelligence that I call Attentional Intelligence. And I developed this concept in 2012. And part of it was because I realized I had this syndrome called bright shiny object syndrome. So I was easily distracted. My attention could be diverted by the simplest of things. I could, sit down and start looking at research when I had a report due, and 3 hours would go by and I go, oh my goodness, where is the time gone? So we know that we need to be able to know where our attention is and become the boss of our attention. And in this really significant digital era that we operate within, there are so many invitations to distract our attention. And in fact, I'm speaking at a conference on how the digital world is reshaping our brains and what we need to do about that. So attentional intelligence is essentially an intelligence which, when highly developed, allows you to effortlessly but mindfully notice where your attention is and to bring it back to where you want it to be. I think about it as your attention muscle in the brain. How do you support yourself to grow that muscle so that you become the boss of your attention? Now, one of the really interesting things is that we're seeing in the workplace, even in meetings, people are on their devices and, they're not necessarily paying attention to what's going on. So when we're not intentionally focusing our attention on what's happening in that meeting, we're not able to enact our emotional social intelligence. So we think these are the three key things. All right, so those are the three intelligences that we believe people develop as a result of participating in the program. And that's certainly kind of one of the higher level goals of the program. Next kind of thing I want to talk about is around psychological safety. And I want to talk just briefly about a research project called Project Aristotle, done by Google. And that's, when Google do things, people seem to pay attention. So Google were really interested in why are some teams really high performing and other teams aren't. And so they decided to do a research project about this. And before they kind of thought if you put an engineer, someone with a PhD and some other smart people together with high levels of IQ, that made a high performing team. Well, clearly it didn't. So they went and looked at about 180 teams. I think they did about 200 interviews over a period of 2 years. And at the end of it, they were still scratching their heads going, what is it that makes for a high performing team? And so they thought they needed to go and look elsewhere. So they turned to some of the material on social norms. And social norms are the things in organisations or teams that guide thinking and behaviour. And they thought, well, let's go and have a look, put that lens over this data and see what we can work out. And in looking through that material, they kind of came across some work by Amy Edmondson around psychological safety, but they essentially worked out that there were 5 key ingredients in teams. There was this idea of dependability, people got things done on time and, did what was expected of them. That there was structure and clarity, so people knew what their roles were, they had some clarity about expectations, and there was structure around how that team did things. The next one is that work had meaning for people, for personal meaning. They felt like it actually meant something that was important to them. And the fourth one was around impact. So that's that idea that what we're doing contributes to the greater good of society or the organisation. But it was the fifth one that was absolutely critical, and it's this concept of psychological safety. So psychological safety is defined by Amy Edmondson as a belief that no one will be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns or mistakes. She didn't come up with the concept. A guy called Khan did, but she's extended upon his learning. And what we're kind of doing in our contemporary thinking about this concept is linking it with the idea of social capital. Look out for a white paper that we're developing, and people will get access to that in the next little while. But I guess what's the crux of psychological safety and is this idea that we create a climate, and we know that the leaders in an organisation are kind of responsible for probably engagement and climate of around 70%. So 70% of it's the responsibility of the leader, if you like. And what's really interesting in the data also shows that when people say what is their biggest stressor in the workplace, they usually say it's their manager or their boss. So we need to be able to create a climate in a team where people feel like they can make mistakes, they can share ideas without fear of humiliation or punishment. We want to see people in teams where they feel like their manager has their back and kind of supports them and provides some cover for them, if you like. And for people to be able to acknowledge difference and be able to have an environment that's characterised by mutual trust and respect. And in the work that we do in this program, really what we're trying to support leaders to do is to enhance their capacity to create a positive psychological safety climate in their teams. One of the really key concepts that underpins the program, so if you go, we've looked at 3 intelligences, psychological safety. The other really key concept that underpins the whole program is understanding the driving principle of the brain, and that is that the brain is organised to minimise threat and maximise reward. The key thing about this is I always say it comes with a warning, this program, because once you learn about the brain, there is no going back. We've had students, that I haven't seen for, several years, and I'll bump into them again and they'll say, you know what, I still use what I learned every single day and I share it with people. So it profoundly influences and affects how you view the world and how you engage with other people. The other really foundation key concept that underpins the whole program is this idea that the brain is a social organ. And we know that the brain has social needs and the world of work is a very social context. A while ago, we kind of thought that if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that food, shelter and water were our most important needs. But in fact, the research has shown that this is not correct. The brain treats social needs as a primary need in the same way it treats, the primary needs of food, shelter and water. So that moment by moment, the brain is assessing things in our environment and determining whether something's going to help us or harm us. This is something that is a foundation that goes through all of the different areas in the program that we talk about again and again. And it links back to a model that's a key model, which is called SCARE. And our SCARE model is something that people use as a model in so many different ways. They use it in performance management, they use it in change processes, and there's 5 key components to it. We all care about significance, so the extent to which we feel appreciated and that we have impact in a social situation. We care about certainty, so moment by moment the brain is trying to create certainty, really challenging in this very uncertain world that we operate in. We care about autonomy. We want to know that we can make choices and determine, have a say over our destiny and how we do work, and people don't like to be micromanaged. We care about relatedness. So we all want to be part of a group or a tribe. We want to be part of an in-group, which is why there's lots of challenges sometimes when an in-group and an out-group can't collaborate together. And the final area that we pay attention to in the world of work is equity. We want to know that we're getting a fair deal. And, you can link this to things around bonuses and incentives and why they cause so much threat in the workplace. So this is a key foundation. So we've got 3 intelligences, psychological safety, the brain is a social organ. And I guess what we're trying to do is to build what we think are 10 key capabilities in the workplace. And I know a lot of people spend heaps of time coming up with capability frameworks. This is kind of our capability framework that underpins the areas that we believe you develop skills in. So you develop your intelligences, but you also develop skills in these key areas. And I'm just going to very briefly go through them. And one of the things to understand in the program is that we always look at how we can use this material and use these skills at an intrapersonal level. So for self, we look at it at an interpersonal level, so how you can use it in a team context. And we also look at it in terms of how you can use it in an organisational wide context. So if we look at ambiguity, that's really about resilience, and that's a really big buzzword at the moment. A lot of people are being kind of told they need to be more resilient. We think it's about dealing with ambiguity, and it's really the skills that we're trying to support people to do is to maintain a positive outlook and respond effectively to problems, change and uncertainty. One of the things we know is that the pace of change isn't going to slow down. It's actually going to escalate. So we need to be able to develop some resilience and be able to deal with ambiguity. The second one is around agility. And we know that it's really important in this time of massive uncertainty and quite turbulent times to have some agility. So from an individual perspective, we need to be able to examine situations from multiple perspectives and to link disparate issues. And obviously, if we're applying this in, say, for example, in an organisational setting, it's the ability to be responsive, flexible and stable in rapidly changing, ambiguous and turbulent environments. We support people to develop skills in, collaboration. There's, a whole study period that looks at collaboration and engagement. And really, what we're trying to support people to do is to develop your ability to work with others collectively with mutual trust and respect, and to be able to understand why is it that, we just don't like some people, and why is it that we find some people so challenging, and what can we do to overcome that? We talk about the notion of being constructive, and some people talk about this as being, without judgment. And I think we always have some judgment. I quite like the idea of being constructive. So it's the ability to consider ideas from multiple perspectives without judgment. And, in each of these kind of skill areas, people walk away from the program with particular models and ideas and techniques. So, for example, in that one, we do a lot of stuff on perspective taking, and we look at concepts like cognitive bias. The next one that I want to take you through is curiosity. And curiosity is a really interesting one because it's almost a mindset. And we believe it's a really important mindset that people need to develop and ensure that they maintain. So it's really this desire to know more and discover what could be rather than what is. And, that you're willing to challenge the current thinking and knowledge. So one of the things we also know is if you're going to support people to be innovative and to have insight, we really need to be asking very good, curious questions. So people walk away with, being able to actually do more of that. Then the next one's around cognitive empathy, and it's really interesting if you look at what happens as people move up the corporate ladder, their empathy actually goes down. And sometimes the coaching I do with very senior executives, one of the themes is around coaching them back to compassion. Anyway, this is really about understanding the difference between cognitive and affective empathy and how to respond appropriately. So we know that some people use what we call more of a felt-based type of empathy, and that doesn't work particularly well in the workplace. It's much better to use more of a cognitive style of empathy. So we kind of take people through that and build skills in that area. The next one is around holistic, and it's really interesting. Don't know if this is happening for anyone else, but I'm working with a lot of organisations where one of their most significant issue is that they're working in silos and they're not collaborating and they're not seeing things from the big picture. So, for example, sales might make a decision about something and they don't consult marketing or other parts of the business, and the flow-on effects are quite dreadful. So, for example, I was working with an organisation where they went, right, we've got to cut wages. So they cut wages, customer satisfaction went down, and sales went down. So it didn't actually achieve anything. They didn't consult and work out how they were going to do that. The other thing that happened is, this is in a retail setting, their loss prevention, so their figures of how much, basically people pinching stuff went right up. So it didn't solve the problem for them. So when we're holistic, we're able to maintain focus and contribute to the collective goals of the organisation. Bias aware, this is a really interesting one. I'm sure some of you have been seeing lots of stuff around bias and cognitive biases. So it's really supporting people to understand what they are and to produce the ability to produce diverse ideas, consider other alternatives and modify behaviours to manage changing circumstances. So we need to be able to actually notice when a cognitive bias is impacting on our decision-making processes and where it's not actually leading to the best solution or best outcome. So we delve quite a lot into the notion of cognitive bias. The next one's around growth mindset. Carol Dweck's done some amazing stuff in this area, and really what we're supporting people is to adopt a growth mindset. We know that this is absolutely critical to be a good leader. It's critical to be an innovative organisation, and it's really placing high value on learning, being open to feedback, and that people are confident in their ability to cultivate their own and other people's abilities. And growth mindset, when we see this at an organisational level, we see much higher engagement, much higher levels of trust. So it's really kind of a bit of a no-brainer. And the last one is around focus. And again, this kind of links quite strongly with the attentional intelligence. It's really the ability to activate attentional intelligence in the moment to support goal attainment. So they're kind of the skill areas that we work to support people to develop in. So I'm just going to take you through broadly what are the kind of areas that we cover in the course, and there's an introductory module that so there's 25 modules, and the first one is around basic neuroanatomy and neurophysiology, so that you understand a bit about how the brain functions and some of the important physiological reactions. So that's the first one. And in each big idea, so there's 6 big ideas for each study period after we've done that introductory module. And that really what we do is we talk about the science, we talk about, well, what does that mean, the so what? And then we provide really practical tools and strategies. And that's what sets this course apart from a lot of other courses that are available, is that we actually work really hard to go, well, what are some really practical ways that you can apply this? So from module 1 in study period 1, you start getting stuff that you can apply straight away. So we look at in the first one, it's the key organizing principle of the brain. It's all about threat and reward. And, really simple strategy we include in there is about symbolic labeling and how we explain how you do that. And the second one, we look at managing threat and reward responses for self and others. So you can see it's geared towards self, but also to other people, and the different strategies you can use for self-regulation. So we go through the ones that are typically not so helpful, not so brain-friendly, and then the ones that are, and again, give people models and really what we kind of call cognitive shortcuts. So there's a model in there that we call LION, which gives you information about how to label, how to get curious, how to look at the origin of the threat, and how to cognitively reappraise it. We look at the domains of threat and reward. That's the SCARE model that I briefly explained before. And again, that becomes a model that you can apply in so many different ways. And in fact, our students, when they say, what are the some of the key things they take away from the program, the concept of threat and reward and SCARE are really big ones for people that are always mentioned. We talk about developing your attentional intelligence and how to do that, and explore the concept of mindfulness, and we talk about how you can do mindfulness in the workplace, without going and sitting in a corner and doing meditation for 10 minutes. It's those moments of mindfulness so that we can actually look after our attention. We look at managing frazzle and stress, and again, this is really important because people are experiencing higher levels of stress than at any time in human history. So how do you manage Frazzle? I love that term, Frazzle. How do you manage it, and how do you manage stress for self and others? What are the simple tools and techniques that you can use to get better at that? And finally, in this study period, we look at managing emotions in the workplace and guarding against emotion contagion. We know emotions are contagious, so how do we guard against negative emotion contagion? Obviously, it's great when it's positive, not so great when it's negative. So that's the first study period. So it's about neuroscience of self-regulation, this first study period. The second study period, we look at decision-making and problem-solving. And really what this delves into, what are some practical strategies for making brain-friendly decisions? Why is decision-making challenging? What are the things that get in the way of making good decisions? And in this study period, we give you frameworks for supporting you to make better decisions, and there's some really useful tools in there and strategies that people can apply again in your world of work, either for yourself as an individual or in teams or whoever you're working with. We delve into the notion that attention's a limited resource and how to manage attention and distraction, how to do distraction management auditing and distraction management plans, why multitasking is a myth and you should stop doing it because it doesn't enhance productivity. Memory. Now, memory is really important in decision making and links again with the notion of cognitive bias. Sometimes we have memory biases that actually make us not make great decisions. So we look at, how do you access and judge whether memories are helping or not helping, and how are memories formed in the brain, and how do you actually support embedding of memories, because sometimes you want to be able to remember stuff, don't you? We look at how on earth do you manage this information overload that we're all struggling with, and how do we also manage choice overwhelm, because that's another thing that people are really struggling with, is how do you make decisions when you're faced with so many different choices. We look at facilitating insight. And this is really important because I think one of the things that we've stopped doing in the workplace is actually creating insight-friendly environments. So we look at, well, how can you create the conditions for insight to flourish for yourself and in your teams? We know that people are spending less and less time doing reflecting. And again, this links back with the curious types of questions that people need to be asking to support those aha moments. And we also spend quite a bit of time looking at cognitive bias in problem solving and decision making. And there's probably, I think there's about, on last count, there's about 143 of them. So you get to do a little bit of an audit of, what are the key ones for you? So that's the second study period. The third study period is all about neuroscience of engagement and collaboration. What's important to understand with each of these study periods is we don't go, oh yeah, self-regulation is done and dusted after study period 1. All of the material builds on the next and it scaffolds. And so we don't stop talking about self-regulation and collaboration and engagement. It kind of builds up. So we know we're born to collaborate. We have this absolute urge to connect and relate. In fact, we die of a broken heart if we don't have connection, and we know that connection is really important. But we also know that we treat each new person that we meet as foe before friend, except when we're drinking and everyone's your friend. So it's really important to find common ground, and we look at, well, why do we struggle with engaging with people that are not like us? And we go through some tools, techniques, and strategies for working with people that are not like you. We look at what are the drivers of engagement in the workplace. We've got this engagement crisis. So what is it that we're getting wrong in the workplace that we're not responding to people in terms of keeping them fully engaged? And one of the things that I think is really interesting is we look at employees as commodities with endless amounts of energy. So, people are tired, and that's really hard to stay engaged when people feel overwhelmed and not getting support. And, again, this links back to the concept of psychological safety. We look at, well, what are the challenges to collaboration and how can you overcome them? We look at, again, building an engaged climate in your team and, kind of talk about some rules of engagement, again, some frameworks, tools and strategies. And the last one in this is a really interesting topic. People are talking about collaboration, but they're actually really talking about cooperation. They're two very different things. So how do we move from cooperation to what we call collaboration, where you actually share resources and you're fully working together, not just cooperating? So that's third study period. The fourth and final study period is around change and facilitating what I call sticky change. So we look at, well, why is change hard? Why does the brain hate change? And we give you a really simple equation for successful change. So we talk about, what are the things that are the challenges and get in the way of change? We talk about the really exciting concept of neuroplasticity, and this is the idea that the brain can change. We're not stuck with this wiring. We can actually, with effort, focus and attention, change what we do and create new habits for ourselves. So that's really exciting. We look at models of habits, really contemporary ways that we can develop new habits, and some of the things that we need to put in place to form new habits or to break bad old habits. And this can take, 23 to 282 days. So we need to have some really cool tools that will help us to stay focused to be able to develop those habits. I'm sure you've all been in the position where you as an individual or your team has said, yeah, we're going to do this new thing, and then you do it for a couple of days and then you stop doing it. Well, there's biological reasons why we do that. When you start knowing these things, that's when you can actually catch your brain trying to sabotage you. We look at goal setting. We talk about why the SMART framework doesn't work and it's not brain friendly. And we offer alternatives to SMART, and we talk about the notion of goal pursuit. So it really challenges some of our old thinking about setting KPIs and why setting KPIs doesn't always end up in the best result. Not saying you shouldn't have some, kind of goals, but the way that we're currently going about it isn't working as well as it could. We look at motivation and motivation mindset. So this is really important because one of the things we know is that we all think that everyone thinks like we think. So we language our messages from how we think people should hear them. And we know that if we language our message and don't meet the mindset of the other person, we actually don't support them to change. We don't motivate them to change. So what you learn, I guess, is how to be bilingual and how to read what the mindset of the other person is so you can language your message appropriately. This one is always something that people get really excited and interested in it. Really shifts their thinking about how they approach change processes and motivation. And the final one is kind of a sum up of all of the brain-friendly change models. I think there's probably about 5 or 6 in this study period alone. I just want to tell you a little bit about the structure of the program. So there's 25 30-minute modules. They, as I said, they have tools, strategies, and the science in them. They're online. They're what are called virtual instructor-led videos, and so it's, you hear me talking. You also get access to YouTube clips and a whole bunch of stuff. One of the things that we're really proud of in the program is we have a 92% completion rate, which is pretty unheard of in the online world, and that's kind of because people really like what we do and they find it really engaging and interesting. And this is all hosted on a learner management system, so you get a login and it's all there in one place, and it's pretty easy to navigate this system. We haven't had people, it's about our 5th system and we're really happy with it. There are 5 downloadable learner guides, which is really the equivalent of a textbook. And that has additional information. It has models are included in there and opportunities to poses reflection questions for you as well. There's a fortnightly live Q&A with either myself or one of my other facilitators. And during this Q&A, and they're recorded, so if you can't make it, you can always listen to it afterwards. We always kind of pick a model or something new, and we share that for about the first 30 minutes and then open it up to questions and answers around basically anything in the program that you want to have a discussion about. And they're pretty lively. They've been really working very well with people. There's a ton of readings and resources that are included. There's a discussion post forum so you can interact with other people. And we've just launched last month what we call our Facebook Inner Circle membership. So this is an exclusive Facebook group that's only available to alumni and current students. And I'll show you a little bit about that in a moment. The program is available for 12 months. We would recommend you don't do a Netflix binge, that it's best done over, probably no shorter than 6 months, because you actually need time to be the scientist of your own experience and to engage and try new things out. Just to give you a little bit of an example, we only launched this, in fact, late last month, and this is what some of the people are sharing. So Mark Ryan, he's one of our alumni. He's in leadership development in a hospital. He's talking about this notion of contagious change is better for business and employees. So he's shared that. It's not something I'd come across before, and I love when I see new things. What is neuroplasticity? Shared by Penny. We had some stuff around Norman Doidge, the guy that wrote The Brain That Changes Itself, which is a great book. And another, I really like this one. This is from Catherine, another alumni. I'm excited for the sharing of ideas. And as an executive coach, I love participating in the Neuroscience Leadership Program for the vast amount of resources and ideas, strategies I could share with my clients. And so she's come across this nice, why you need to give your brain a break, the best brain possible. So it's kind of nice to see people sharing, and they're also sharing models and how they're using things. So that's really lovely as well. And that was definitely the intention of that particular group. These are, a lot of people say to me, well, who does the program? And I kind of sometimes cheekily say, well, anyone with a brain. The people that have done our program have been very broad. They've been in leadership positions. They've been coaches, L&D people, organisational development people. We've had a chef. We've had people in personal training, principals of schools. So a really broad mixture. It's basically anyone that works with people really can benefit from the program. So these are just a couple of the people that have, sort of shared what their experience was up the program. Paul, he's one of our alumni from the UK. He's saying it's one of the best he's ever participated in, really likes the structure and signposting. Anita, another alumni, she's the COO of City Beach, which is a large retail surf company in Australia. And she's, obviously using it with her executive team, and I continue to actually do some work with that business. So we're seeing it being rolled out throughout the whole business, which is very exciting. Another guy who's in leadership and capability, Mike from a local authority, he's putting it in, using the material and putting it into his development program. So a lot of people, if you're creating leadership development programs, we say use the material. You know, as long as you acknowledge the source of any of our models, we want you to use it because we want to get this stuff out there. Kelly from HR Director at Campbell Arnott's, again using it in her work. So I just wanted to kind of give you some sense of a real variety of people that have been in the program. And finally, I guess the thing that the program does is it forever changes how you think about things. So, you know, people have changed their whole strategies around engagement and even how they measure it. You know, so people have stopped measuring engagement and people are starting to measure psychological safety climate, and we've developed some tools to support that. People are really, it gets you rethinking how you approach change. We know so many change management initiatives fail, and they fail for some really basic reasons that we can address early on if we put this neuroscience lens over it. We know it's really important in developing leadership, really important in rethinking performance management. You know, performance management doesn't work. Why do we keep doing it in the stupid old ways we're doing it? So people have redesigned their frameworks based on what they've learned in the course. Bonuses and incentives, another big area that people have done some tweaking and thinking about, and also customer service, and that's another area that's getting a lot of attention of late that we need to be paying more and more attention to. They're just some examples. There's a ton of different areas that people have made shifts and changes in. One of the things that we're offering with this program, we've developed an advanced diploma of neuroscience of leadership, which we plan on hopefully delivering July, and if people wanted to transition into that program, we'll take the cost of this program off that program. So that's another kind of bonus if you want to get started. So that's kind of it. I guess the only other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, if you do decide to go ahead with this program and it's not for you, and we'll give you your money back. You've got 30 days to try it. We've never had anyone ask for their money back, but we're prepared to do that because we know that, you know, the program is not necessarily going to be right for everyone. It seems to be right for most people at the moment, but, you know, we just want to give people that reassurance. Specific questions that people have. I can see that there's still a number of you on the call. Is there anything that is still unanswered for you that you'd like me to elaborate on?